And I'll just say, I think it's absolutely fascinating what's happening in Israel right now with the Temple Institute and some of these other organizations and what they're doing. Um,
Yeah,
is
we got five red
um,
heifers.
yeah, I mean that's just a few months ago we got five from some ranch over in Texas.
Right. Yeah, maybe.
Um, and that's what's so great is when we talk about some of these things that are happening. Um, I had talked about it with Palmer.
Yeah,
We did an episode together
that was
not
the
too long
episode
ago.
that that's how I found you because
Oh,
I saw
okay,
that episode that you did with Scott Palmer. Yeah.
yeah. So he and I are very much, I think, in agreement about how we view um, Israel and the Old Covenant and the restoration, just being a restoration of the old ancient covenant. And so when we look at Israel, when we look at the Temple Institute or what's happening with the red heifers and all these things, we get excited. It's fun to see what's
Yeah.
happening because it just means that God's will is being fulfilled line upon line, and we're on this trajectory back to Him, and it's exciting to see that. One, it's just exciting to see it actually play out, and two, it's exciting to see that it's not just Latter Day Saints.
Yeah.
Like like when we talk
We,
about the guy who gave the five red heifers from his ranch in Texas to the Temple Institute, they interviewed the guy, and he sounded like um, he really sounded like just kind of a regular old dude. He didn't have any sort of um, ministry or anything. He was just I think in the interview he even just said, I don't know, I just was reading in the Bible and it's talking about
move
these,
on.
yeah, I talk, I just read these scriptures in the Old Testament. It's talking about these heifers, and I saw that these people out there in Israel are doing this, and I thought, well, maybe I can help out some way, and here's the Lord provides a way that I can help out. And so
It's
um
beautiful.
it's awesome. I think that's the coming together on as one in Christ. And I think that's what the whole restoration is pointing to. It's not an us or them, or us versus them. It's not a Latter-day Saints versus Israel or versus Jewish religion. It's not uh us
It's
versus Protestants or Catholics or anything. It's we're all supposed to be um we're all supposed to be seeking to be moved upon by the Spirit and accomplish God's will, and eventually we'll all come under the banner of Christ.
Yeah. You just have to lift where you stand, to use a famous phrase, right? So everyone, so yeah, it's you don't need to think that um, your church or your group is the only tree in God's vineyard, right? God is planting. God's vineyard is bigger than us, right? So um, even even sometimes we get confused and think that we're the tree, you know. Um, like when I think of the different branches of the restoration, or even the Jews, I actually think we make a mistake sometimes. Like when we interpret Jacob chapter 5 and the Zenos's allegory, that we think that the whole tree is us, when really we're just like a branch. Any group that you're in, you're just a branch of the tree. And it's important to wherever you're grafted into the tree, to grow the best fruit that you can wherever you are. And the branches don't get to judge the other branches and decide whether the fruit of the other branches is good or not, right? It's the Lord of the vineyard that comes and tastes the fruit everywhere, and He's the one who will declare whether it's good or bad. And so, just leave that to Him. You just focus on growing the fruit, your little branch, wherever that is on the tree, and the rest will be
Well, and to that point,
take care.
Jacob 5 is a beautiful allegory. And I recently changed my profile picture on my channel, but for a long time, and it's still up on the banner part, but for a long time, it's this olive tree.
Yeah.
Um, and it comes from Jacob chapter 5.
Mm.
And that's why I had it when I originally thought of doing a podcast of some sort. um I thought of the entirety of the restoration as the olive tree, and there's various branches, and we're all trying to produce fruit. And the imagery there I thought was very powerful. And so for a long time, I've had that as part of the imagery for the show, and
Beautiful.
that's why is from Jacob chapter 5. And what's so interesting, I think we think of Jacob chapter 5, especially, I know as Latter-day Saints, we think of us as like either us or the Jews or both, as kind of represented in this one main tree, like the good tree.
Hmm.
And God is really trying to get the best fruit possible out of it, and whatever. And there are various times where he's had to graft in other branches into it so that it'll continue to grow and produce fruit, and pull other branches off those, and take them to other parts of the vineyard. That's the scattering of Israel. And we have all this imagery embedded in this allegory. Um, but we don't think enough about the fact that the Lord of the Vineyard isn't only focused on this one tree. It's his prized tree, and it's representing the larger restoration of his covenant and all those who will enter into that covenant. But he's still tending to the entire vineyard of
Yeah.
many trees, and he knows it's an explicit in the chapter itself, in the allegory itself. It's explicit that he goes to and prunes the entire vineyard. He dungs it, he prunes it, he
Yeah.
he
Amen.
cultivates it. Everywhere in the vineyard gets attention, and it all gets pruned and nourished. And he knows that some are going to produce really good fruit, some are going to produce so-so fruit, mixed fruit, some are going to produce bad fruit, some are not going to produce much fruit at all, and maybe even despite his best efforts are going to wither away.
Mm-hmm.
But it's explicit in the text that he is well aware of the fact that they are all going to produce different degrees of quality in their fruit, but he still tends to all of them anyway.
Yeah.
He doesn't just hone in on one tree. He's honed
Uh,
in on the entire vineyard, expecting them to produce different degrees of quality of fruit. And so I read stories about this guy in Texas giving his red heifers over to the Temple Institute, and I'm like, that's a man who is in a part of the vineyard who was pruned and nourished, and who received the good word of God and was moved upon by that spirit to do whatever he could to produce the best fruit he possibly could.
yeah.
And
Very, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
It reminds me of when the tabernacle in the wilderness was built, and basically, Jehovah tells Moses, tell everyone to come and bring whatever they are moved upon to bring to offer towards this effort. And so I think that the story of the red heifers there just kind of illustrates that beautifully. And that hopefully that applies to everyone everywhere. That everyone will do the things that they're moved upon by the Spirit to further God's work on the earth, to that God's will may be done on the earth as it is in heaven, right? And that can be done in any part of the vineyard, anywhere, at any time.
Yeah, if you have a desire, then you are called to
Yeah.
the work.
Then you're called. Yeah, if you have a desire, you're called. That's it. That's beautiful.
And it's not a purely LDS or restoration thing. If you are a good Catholic and you feel compelled to do something good because you feel moved upon, and you do it, then you are doing God's will. If you're a Protestant and you're doing the same, you're doing God's will. It's not a us versus them thing. And eventually, I think we'll all come under the banner of Christ, and all will be at least presented the opportunity to accept the covenant.